Ta-da! It's me again for another session from the Wise Asylum. How are you doing? How are you doing? As winter starts to creep in, it's getting bloody cold on the old nether regions, I have to say. It's not good. How are you doing, everybody? Hello, Mew, Paul, Slipknot. Hello, how's things? Well, lots going on. Hello, Paul. Lots and lots of things going on. There's more bullshit coming out of Chalco, Westminster than you can imagine. And is anybody taking any notice? I have to say, I'm not so sure that they are. However, enough of that nonsense for now. Let's have a look at the other nonsense in the Ukraine. So, just watching the West reporting what's going on as Vlad, the Impaler, calls up guys who have been in the army previously up to 300,000. Now, of course, the West are presenting it as everybody's fleeing Russia, blah, blah, blah. And doesn't seem to be the case. These guys are all ex-military. They're being called up and they're going to receive 3 weeks training, of course, depending on how long they've been out of the military. And it doesn't look like they're actually going to be put into the theatre of combat. It looks like they're going to pretty much fill the ranks of the militaries in Russia in order the existing troops can actually bolster the Wagner group and the Chechens who are fighting in the Ukraine, as we all know. So, you know, you never get a full story or a correct story from the West. You've really got to find some good people out there that know what's going on and are happy to tell you. So, basically what's come out this week is the nuclear power station in the Ukraine that the Russians hold, but the Ukraine military has been bombing, would appear to be because it's come out that what they were actually doing, the Ukrainians in that power station, was building dirty bombs. Ooh, not very good, no wonder. Zelensky's bombing the living shit out of it. Is it? You know, it's not a surprise at all. If that works out to be correct, which I would say, from where the data's come from, there's probably something in that. So the call-up's going on. I know there's some people in the West are trying to present it as everybody's fleeing Russia. There's obviously going to be some, but it's not general public. It's not a conscription. You know, it's not conscription that he's talking about. It's recalling ex-military service personnel. So keep that in mind. What else have we got here? So there'll be a few stats here as we discussed before. The figure now for Ukrainian death militaries is getting to 61,000. So a lot of dead people. So 10,000 have died in the last 3 weeks or so since we last discussed the statistics on that. It's looking like some almost 6,000 Russian personnel have been killed, but of course mostly we're talking about the Wagner group, which is Putin's Blackwater, or the Foreign Legion, as we've discussed. So there's some 6,000, and of course the Chechens are fighting in there as well. So again, it's not necessarily the Russian militaries that are actually suffering these casualties, as it were. But 6,000 is a lot of soldiers, whatever you might think about it. It's a lot of dads in it. It's a lot of sons, and it's not good. Let's be honest with you. Further attempts to get the United Nations to hate Russia isn't going very well. It's not going as well as the West would like it to go. So that's another thing that you need to keep in mind. And of course, there's another issue that's come out here as well, in that these biolabs that they have found in the Ukraine were actually creating, they were actually going to be using migrating birds to spread biological crap, which is interesting when you consider we've just had an outbreak of flu in the seagull population here. So they're saying that it's flu. I'm not so sure, because I'll tell you what I noticed 10 years ago. The garden I had then was just full of sparrows, and I mean tons of them. They used to come in a gang in the morning, they'd bathe in the soil under the tree, and then again at the evening. But the gardens were just full of sparrows. And I noticed that as these mass started to go up, the sparrows just disappeared. And it was profound, because they disappeared from going from big gangs of sparrows in my garden to none. Obviously, I'm out in the countryside a lot, so the sparrows have seemed to have moved out of the towns and the cities and into the countryside. So there's got to be something going on there, specifically to the towns and cities. So naturally, we suggest that it's got something to do with the frequencies that they're pumping out everywhere. However, I found something last week, actually, but we didn't have time to talk about it last week. But China actually, quite a number of years ago, decided that to improve their harvest, they needed to kill all the sparrows, which they did. They actually killed all the sparrows, which caused the opposite of what they wanted, because it was the sparrows that were eating all the insects that damage crops. So we know from China that is a strategy that's been employed. They've actually killed off one specific lot of birds. So that's possible. By whatever means, I don't know. I do know that some years ago, the bird feed that everybody feeds all their birds in our gardens, because the English love the birds, were being poisoned, the seeds. And that also could possibly be the way that they actually got rid of a lot of these sparrows. So I thought that were interesting. There's definitely something gone on with the sparrows. Of course, I always thought it was the frequencies, but when you look at what China were doing, it could well be a biological attack on them. Which again is rather sinister, is it not? Hello, Cos. And hello, Gary Garcia. You're up early. What are you doing? Have you wet the bed, sir? Or are you getting the sunshine early in the mornings as you enter spring? You're entering spring and we're entering the winter, which is not good, but welcome to you, my friend. So that's the kind of basic crap that's going on around everybody as they talk bollocks on the media. What else have we got? I might have to put the gigs on because I can't see. And I've noticed that the Western media are constantly talking about Russia's conscription. It is not a conscription. It's a recall. In the same way, when you leave the military here, you're still attached to the lodges, and you've got 7 years to be called up without you basically being able to say nay. So there's no difference. It's just a strategy that you would employ. I don't like the fact that he's talking about nuclear. That's a bit worrying. So there's obviously something going on, and I think what's going on is NATO are now active in the theatre. Because Zelensky's getting a little bit smarter. Because he's not smart. The Ukraine is at 61,000 dead, is showing that they're not that smart either. So for Putin to be talking, well, he hasn't actually talked nuclear. He's actually suggested that, he will use them if need be. So I think we have to be aware of that. But also we have to remember, when it comes to this Third World War, we go back to Nostradamus, and he was very clear that what happens is America's attacked nuclear at 6 a.m. in the morning, and nobody has a clue who's done it. Nobody knows who's done it. But of course, if this war is still ongoing, who's everybody going to blame? Ghostbusters, of course. It's going to be Vlad the Impaler. But again, for Vlad to be talking stuff like this, it just again, it cements the idea that we should really get to grips with the fact that there's a priesthood running everybody. They're all operating to the same agenda. Albeit, they might not be friends anymore. Doesn't matter. They're just the face of it, the front, you know? As the ruling guy said when we went through his interview, they're all puppets. All the monarchies are puppets. They're all puppets, all a lot of them. And we're going to get into a little bit of this now that she's had 12 days. That's fine. It's fair game now because we've got a lunatic that they're all claiming is the king. No, you're not the king or the queen until you have taken the coronation oath and tied yourself to the upkeep of the realm. Keep that in mind, people. He's a nobody at the moment. He's a king in waiting. Okay, he's oathed himself to the Church of England, but as we discussed last week, the Church of England is an absolute crock of shit. Yeah, it's under Vatican II, so that doesn't herald any hope in any way, shape or form, I would have to say. Hello, Matt Zilla. Hello and welcome to you. So, we're going to get into that in a bit. We've also got the second round of the etymology of words. There's going to be a part 3, unfortunately, because I've got a bit excited on this one, and I've found myself adding quite a lot of my own take on these things in sync with what we all understand in relation to legal as opposed to law. Mark Olin, hello Mark, says, is the UN currently being brought into London? Seen a couple of videos of military equipment and the UN marching through London in the early morning. Well, that wouldn't surprise me. I do remember during the early times of the lockdowns, NATO, the German NATO head-on shows flooded, was it Salisbury? No, Avebury? No, I can't remember. Salisbury, I think. And the parachute regiment was all called up and all sent down there. So we do know that, and of course Germany is being demolished, so it looks like they've moved the Fourth Reich headquarters over here to Blighty during the lockdowns that we had over the last couple of years. So it would not surprise me if the UN are brought into London, because of course this place was by far the greatest rebelling nation to all the garbage that we experienced in the last 2.5 years, which is why it got shut down here first. And of course then, monkey see, monkey do, other governments got a bit brave and decided that they would follow suit. So we have to understand that these islands, as small as they are, carry a lot of power. Why? Because we're not stupid. We're not all stupid. You know, I've looked at the figures now for the uptake of the bug thing, and it's quite worrying. But when you look at it, the first, lots. Second, not so many. Third, even less. So they've got a problem here. They've got a problem. I know that it's still going on and a lot of people are popping the clogs, but that's on them, is it not? They decided, they chose, say no more about it. There's no point getting involved in that. Is it? You know, it's just a waste of time. You're wasting your energy and throwing your emotions out where you don't actually need to throw them. So the first thing I want to look at is rather worrying, and because it's directly relating to this no-hide system. But first, I just want to say, I've always been a conservative, as a conservative outlook. And conservatism to me means less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and I'll take control of my destiny. Thank you very much. Yeah? That's the way it is. And that way, especially with less government, also understands that the government should not ever be controlling the economy, because the economy is supposed to be in our hands. Is it not? So when we talk, you know, these idiots talking all the time about, oh, the economy is wearing. No, they've nicked it. They've monopolised it. It no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the private corporate realm, beholden to the crown. So there we go. And of course we're talking about the temple crown, which is co-opted through the monarch that's just been announced to go, because it's pretty obvious she went a long time ago, did the dirty deed and undid everything Queen Elizabeth I did. As Greg Allett rightly shown us. Because he didn't need to show us, because we can see it for ourselves if we actually take the time to have a look. So the first thing I'd like to have a gander at, ladies and gentlemen, is the secret plan. A secret plan to move the British embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is in place, according to former UK diplomat Craig Murray. Now, Trump did this with the American embassy. So everything's moving out of Tel Aviv into Jerusalem, and as we've discussed, the King of Jerusalem was set up by the Templars. It has absolutely nothing to do with Judaism. It's entirely in the hands of the Babylonian priesthood. Okay? So they're just misusing this nonsense. And I'll just put this to you. When I was quite successful on the Daily Telegraph in London, maybe, 10 years ago, I was actually set to, there was a Tory councillor from London trying to set me up as an anti-Semite. So we had a bit of a shebang on the website itself. I think this was in the comment section. And he couldn't beat me at all, because I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm not anti-anything apart from anti-bullshit. And I'm proud to say that. So he was trying to set me up as an anti-Semite. It wasn't working, he was getting more and more angry, and the stuff that he was putting out on there was ridiculous. So I started to copy it. Now, what I put up at that point was a speech from the 1960s, actually, and it was the World Jewish Congress meeting. And the chief Aroni stood up and said, and I wrote this, it was the minutes from that thingy that I presented on the Daily Telegraph website, where the chief Aroni of the Jewish Congress said, "We didn't choose Israel for any religious reasons or holy reasons. We chose it because of the pivotal point of trade between Africa, Asia and Europe." The Daily Telegraph website disintegrated in front of everybody's eyes. I kid you not. So I'd copied all this guy's stuff and then sent it to his entire his area in London, and I sent it to all his colleagues in his ward to show them just what kind of a idiot they had as a colleague in that ward. Now that got me attention of a lot of high-class level people in London, and it was interesting to say the least. So we know that these Tories, as they call themselves, which originally was a term to denote the Catholic bandits, are certainly not conservatives. Okay, they are not conservatives in any way, shape or form, because they're all about big government. They want to get in your pocket, and they don't want you to have any destiny at all outside the moon pig gods arena, as it were. So there we go. So it says, citing an unnamed source, Murray said that the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, FCO, has carried out secret contingency planning for a post-Brexit move to Jerusalem. The plan has not been announced because of its controversy, but it is thought that it may be implemented in the UK if the UK decides to leave the European Union. It has nothing to do with the European Union. This is the agenda of the Noahide, which intends to create its own United Nations that the Sanhedrin will control completely. Before that can happen, all the UN's nations, embassies have to be moved out of Tel Aviv into Jerusalem to build and bring up this Babylonian Noahide global control system. Okay, so it's very, very important. And as I said last week, Truss has no contract with you at all. She's been put in by the aristocracy. She'll do what the aristocracy tell her to do. We have a king about to take a king in waiting. Again, he is not subject or contracted to you, to the realm, to the constitution. Okay, he is not interested in that, and therefore he can't stop it. So the aristocracy are running riot in order that the British aristocracy and the Scottish specifically remain tied to the US so-called aristocracy, your Bushes, you know, all these fruit bats that has dragged us into all these wars and basically blew up the towers there in New York back in 2001. So this is what it's all about. It's ensuring that they fix this nation, or let's say the Bank of England, to its subservient Federal Reserve System, British Empire. So when you talk about America, it's not America that's doing this. It's not England that's doing this. This is the banking conglomerate, the cartel, ensuring that we are tied together. Because the Federal Reserve does what the Bank of England says. The Bank of England is completely controlled by the House Rothschild, and has been so for a very long time, as you guys probably already know. So, interesting stuff going on. Birds are all going off and woke me up. Right, well that's good. At least you've still got birdies. That's got to be good. Mark says, thanks mate, no problem Mark. And Stanford True says, did you hear they will stop national insurance in November? No, I did not. Where's that? Have you got a link to that? We need to get that up here and have a look at that, because the national insurance account is the bank account for the Secretary Trust. Is it not? Oh, now that is that's some shenanigans I'm not really impressed with at all. Let's carry on with this. That's what it's saying. It says, Murray explained that the UK is bound by a common position under EU common foreign policy. So until Brexit, the official line is that the UK is not considering moving its embassy. Forget it. Do not think it's got anything to do with the European Union. This is entirely Truss and this tosser, Charles, dragging us into Nohide before he oaths. Okay? But he's going to do what his mother did anyway, and we're going to look at that. Okay? He says, reasons for wanting the move is said to be partly ideological and partly to sweeten relationships with the USA in sinking a trade deal. Well, they've already done it. The Trump did that. That's why they call him King Cyrus. He emancipated the Babylonian priesthood and they built the second temple. Jesus came along and knocked it off its perch, right down to the last brick. There's another interesting thing that I've come across as well this week, in that you've got Jehovah's Witnesses running around everywhere giving it the Yahweh, oh, we're brothers in Christ, blah, 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 blah. What utter nonsense. You only have to look at Jude 9, and there's the discussion over Moses, and that they say only our God, Yahweh, knows where Moses is buried. Well, what did Jesus say about them? You are the children of the devil, your father. So Yahweh, being the God of the priesthood of Babylon, has got nothing to do with the Holy Father that the man Jesus presented to you. It's a completely different game altogether. How have all these so-called priests and so-called intelligent religious people missed this? Well, probably because they've been copying Schofield Bible, which if you look at, the entire thing that built this Noahide system is based entirely on Cyrus Schofield's notes. Nothing to do with the biblical tradition. It's his notes. And I think we've presented that. If not, I'm going to present it under this video after, so you can have a little look. Because that's what's going on here. It says, expressing his own observation about the plan, he said the Tories probably think this would cause more trouble between Corbyn and the parliamentary Labour Party, and that the Westminster classes are totally out of touch with the real public opinion on Palestine, as they seldom meet anybody who does not share their extreme Zionism. Oh, I'm glad he's mixed that in, that's good. Mirror revealed that information regarding the secret plan came to him via the unknown FCO source. Unable to guarantee the full reliability of the source, Murray said he had contacted the FCO press department to confirm the story. Commenting on the Foreign Office's failure to respond to his query, there you go. They can't answer it because they'd have to affirm it, because it's a fact. And it's got nothing to do with the EU, Corbyn, or anybody else. It's entirely the requirement to move all the embassies into Jerusalem, under the King of Jerusalem, the Babylonian priesthood. Okay? You Jewish people need to get a grip of what's happened to you. Okay? What's happened to you again? You've been corralled. Commenting on the Foreign Office's failure to respond to his query, Murray said, if this is nonsense, it would have taken the FCO 2 minutes just to say so, would it not? In his email, the FCO said Murray informed his media staff that he was asking a specific question regarding any preliminary study that may have been conducted or is being conducted, while pointing out that a genetic response to his query, such as there are no plans to move the embassy, would be insufficient as an answer. Memo contact the FCO also specific. This is the reports been made up by Memo. Contact the FCO also asking specifically if the UK had conducted or is conducting a post-Brexit contingency plan to move the embassy, and was told that the British Embassy to Israel is based in Tel Aviv and we have no plans to move it. So, ladies and gentlemen, keep your beady eyes and ears on that agenda. And of course, all this Putin stuff, all this nonsense is just diverting, but also, more importantly, it's very difficult to get nations to go and do battle with each other. They need this script going so that they, from these nuclear subs that we all pay for, that we don't own, can bomb the shit out of America. Well, you get America at war. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You're back on. You've got another Pearl Harbor going on there, which we all know were fake and created by the American elite, the federal government. Okay, so there you go, folks. That is very important data that people do need to be aware of. Now then, let's have a little look here. So we'll go here first. Now, I've talked about the tour of the estates, and somebody sent me this quite some time ago, and it's Judge Anna von Ritz. She's quite good, actually. So where are we? Now then, I don't know where to start, actually. We don't need to start at the beginning because it's not actually. Alright, let's start at the beginning. It's always a good point. She'd received several inquiries from the Scottish and Irish and Canadian groups who were confused. They thought that, to at least some appreciable extent, they have been cut free from the British yoke, so they are checking their treaties, especially their treaties from Westminster, and wondering what the hell. First fun flying factoid. Westminster is a separate principality of the inner city of London, which is itself an independent international city-state and part of the municipal government established by the Holy See. That's the traders, the merchants, yeah? The Venetians, who of course are this Babylonian priesthood representatives. So a treaty from Westminster is a separate deal with a different entity than you might suppose, meaning it's not a contract to do with England, the English realm. It's nothing to do with that. This is specifically the inner city of London, the Temple Crown. You may recall certain annual ceremonies where the Queen knocks on the door of Westminster and is admitted by the Lord Mayor, and then she walks behind him in procession, head bowed. This is because she has entered the separate jurisdiction of Westminster, which does not, strictly speaking, exist on British soil, or rather English soil there, Anna. Get it right, Joe. In the case of Canada, and I have no reason to think it's substantially different for Scotland, Ireland, Wales or Australia, Westminster released the Canadians from subject status many years ago. They entered into their national sovereignty, meaning they gained control of the top 6 inches of dirt throughout the country known as a soil jurisdiction. The people were also released as living beings. Okay? So the land was released back, but only 6 inches above. Okay? Rather, the top 6 inches. All that is very well and good, but this does not release the land jurisdiction owed to the Canadians, which the Queen continues to claim and exercise via her office connected to the Tour of Estates. For the purpose of claiming and exercising her dominion over the land jurisdiction deeper than 6 inches, she does not occupy her throne at all. It is the underground portion that she retains and gloms onto. The realm of the dead and the mineral resources. Because, of course, where do they stick you when you've died? Underground. Or at sea if you're Admiralty. But yeah, you get in the picture. This is why all the murders and child sacrifices and the dirty business always occurs underground. This is why Princess Di was killed in a tunnel. Questionable. This is the royal secret. This is how Elizabeth could take the coronation oath with her living breath and promise to honour the public law and all the other good things that the coronation oath requires. And then 3 days later, turn around and break it all. 3 days after the coronation, she stepped down from the actual throne, occupied the Tour of Estates, and has remained there doing the dirty work and ruling over the dead realm ever since. Persons remember this, people. And so while she's busy claiming the land, and that means the physical land estates of the dead, her consort Prince Philip is just as busy claiming the assets of all the various persons, also dead entities that belong to the realm of the dead. Okay? Prince Philip, Nazi. Remember that. Who were his boss? Who were his mentor? Battenberg, or Mountbatten, as the baby boomers like to call him. Remember John Doe, who is a ward of the Public Charitable Trust run by the US Attorney General's office, and therefore treated as an incompetent and a ward of the state, and legally and civilly dead. He belongs as property to Prince Philip, and Prince Philip will tell you that if you press him. Well, he's dead now, so he can't talk. So who's taking Philip's role then? Are they going to roll this into... Is this another role they're going to move into this big-eared monarch? That isn't yet. Remember, he's king in waiting. Are they going to shove all this power onto this one monarch, as I've said, for this return of the king? And as I presumed, I think they're going to give it William. Now it's looking like they might not. We might buffer us all and put some fruit bat on, who's 100% 21st degree Prussian knight, no high judge. My guess it would be. Can you imagine if it's a jock? You know, one of them guys that likes them dead kisses, the bagpipes, tooting on all that racket for brain like. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, shut Sean and get on with the game. So wait a minute. In the falsification, lost at missing. No, I'm going to start that again because I'm rubbish. Remember John Raymond Doe? He's an estate of John Raymond Doe, an American presumed lost missing at sea. After that is considerable self-interested falsification of both public and private records by Her Majesty's territorial employees. His land assets are presumed to belong to the Queen, and all else that he might is presumed to belong to Philip. Are you seeing this? Yeah, you are. Where am I? If you are still as fed up with this crap all as I am, write to the Ambassador British Embassy, that's Canada, and to the Secretary General United Nations Headquarters in New York, and to the President Donald J. Trump. The trumpet is no longer president. Care of the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's pointless sending that to Trumpet. He's on the wrong side. Anyway. And give them all a piece of your mind concerning your actual political status and your standing in full life and your opinion of all these mind rapes and games that have been playing and taken seriously too. And it should not necessarily for you to demand the return of your life force value annuities. Be the extent that those values should never have been conceptually separated from you in the first place. But as things stands, we all have to call halt to this nonsense and an end to the British Raj and the Bar Association's enforcing it. Now that's interesting with the British Raj. I've just been completely robbed off an Indian toss bag, and we've got these idiots down in Leicester at the RSS upsetting the other group of numpties, the Kafir down in Leicester, to the point that we've had some rather stupid things going on, which I've pulled up 2 videos to show us because, you know, this is my caution to Muslims. You are really not intelligent enough to play the game that they've been set off to play. And if we have time, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here, okay? You really don't understand your own religion. You really don't understand how to use rhetoric, and you have no idea that it just doesn't enter your head that you need to understand something, guys. You are guests on England, okay? On England, okay? You're pushing Sharia. It doesn't represent the Quran. You're kafir. I know you don't understand this because you're listening to Imam, okay? And if we have time for these 2 videos, we need to look at them, or at least listen to them, because I don't want to breach copyright. But this is what's going on. But I just want to caution you guys down there in the south. It's not going to wash, and it's not going to wash because if this is the best you've got, you know, Hindus are going to be the least of your worries. You're going to be facing England here. Because this is not acceptable, okay? It's not acceptable. It's not in tune with the Quran. And you're not Muslims. Because you're following a false Sharia, which is against English law. This Sharia that's got you going is against every international covenant that there is in the world. And we've discussed this. You know, you get a grip. You can't keep running around on stupid emotion and belief. It's not the way the world works, gentlemen. It really isn't. And you need to get a grip of this because it's going to be... You're going to undermine yourselves in such a manner you are not going to believe it. Now then, next. Here we go. Now, I've told you before, some of us have studied in the past that the fact that the Queen died quite some time ago. Back in the day, it was said that she died the day before the London knife attack on London Bridge, hence the reason using the term London Bridge has fallen. We looked at that last week. We don't have to go through that again. But here is what isn't a secret. It's been known for a long time. It's just been forgotten because, of course, the baby boomers are too self-obsessed and just believe whatever the television tells them. And before that, whatever the radio told them. So they're pointless. This is for people that are awake and your younger generations, because this is the kind of stuff that you need to know. Now, the top secret British royal family twins revealed at last. Okay? In 1926, twins were born in London to Elizabeth Bowes Lyon, the Loch Ness Monster. That's their take, not mine. Which she named Elizabeth and Lilibet. In 1930, another girl named Margaret was born in Glamis Castle, Scotland. Now, okay, well, we're not getting to that. Marion Crawford was the first and only person to write a book about the twins. Her book was published in New York by Harcourt Brace and Company in 1950. So this is before Elizabeth took the oath and then dropped off. Alright, so this was known before. A close friend of Princess Margaret named Sharman Douglas helped her polish and prose and arranged for the book to be published in New York. So Margaret did this, but I like Princess Margaret. I liked her, she was a good egg. I like Princess Anne, who, through this funeral, that girl looks terrified. She looks exceptionally terrified, and she will be. She's lost her father and her mother. They're on their own, and she's the only one in that twisted family that, in my opinion, has any kind of capacity to operate in accordance with England. But of course she'd have to have the entire English nation behind her, and that she would operate according to law and not the aristocratic garbage. Because it's not an English aristocracy, it's a Prussian, Babylonian, Venetian screwball bunch of landowning naughty boys and girls. Now then, when the Scottish governess arrived at Windsor Castle in 932, she found 3 children, an infant named Margaret, still in the nursery, and 2 rambunctious twins named Elizabeth and Lilibet. Those girls were the little princesses she wrote about in her book. Only a keen observer could identify them as twins, yet the writing of that book led to her excommunication and complete ostracism by the royal family. So, there you can see, Lilibet age 6 and Margaret age 2. Okay? And on here you've got the little princesses. You've got, I can't really read it actually, anyway, never mind that. It's beyond belief, but the British Empire has been misruled by twin queens since 1953. In 2015, a report was issued by the BBC that the Queen had passed away. That report was later denied, but if it's true, Lilibet has gone to purgatory. So, of course, that's 2015, so that's even earlier than the London Bridge knife attack, yeah? Who knows? Well, I don't know. Anyway, London, June 3rd, 2015, a behind-the-scenes rehearsal of how the BBC will handle the death of Queen Elizabeth II ended with an apology Wednesday after one of its reporters mistakenly tweeted that the British monarch had passed away. I actually remember that. Aman Khawaja, a reporter working for the BBC's Urdu language service, posted on Twitter that the 89-year-old had been taken to hospital. A second tweet announced Queen Elizabeth had died. Reverend Billy Graham, the world's most beloved Protestant evangelist, met Elizabeth in 1984, and he thought that she was a housekeeper. Here is his quote about Billy and his wife, Ruth, seeing double. Once, when visiting the royal family at Sandringham in 1984, Ruth and I walked past a woman wearing an old raincoat, Wellingtons and a scarf. She was bent over fixing some food for the dogs. We thought at first she was one of the housekeepers, but when she straightened up, we saw that it was the Queen. And that's Graham, Just As I Am, page 690. The only dogs Lilibet cared about were the dogs of war. The Queen was waiting impatiently for the good news that Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan had unleashed the dogs of nuclear war on the Soviet Union. The twins were born on April the 21st, 1926, at Bruton Street in Mayfair. King George V was on the throne at the time. The babies were delivered by caesarean section, assisted by 3 of the top obstetric surgeons in the country. By law, the Home Secretary was also present to prevent a repetition of the warming pan plot. Elizabeth seemed to be a normal little girl, while Lilibet showed supernatural intelligence. So on the right, you've got 2-year-old Elizabeth. On the left, you've got Elizabeth, and on the right, we've got Lilibet. Okay. Ostensibly, Prince Albert, husband to Queen of Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, was the father of the twins. Prince Albert later became King George VI, and severe physical and psychological problems, and was not her conditioned. Okay. The ostensible father of the twins was Albert, Duke of York. Albert later reigned as King George VI, and he was smothered with a pillow on February the 6th, 1952. The mother of the twins was Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. Now, Greg brought some interesting data there. Whether it can't be proved, I've tried everywhere, but I've found nothing. But then, of course, this royal secret would be a royal secret. Or as he called it, the great shin of the 200-year period from the Rothschilds taking control of the monarchy because of debt. The long-lived Elizabeth was as strong as a horse, but the twins were very reluctant to leave the safety of her womb and enter the British royal family. Then you've got Prince Albert on the left and Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon on the right. James Stuart of Findhorn was actually a descendant of the old Pretender, and the Stuarts were always working indefatigably to replace the Hanover or Windsor dynasty. Here is an excerpt from the autobiography of James Stuart about the first meeting of Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon and the Duke of York. Quote, "My career as a courtier was nearly over now, although I did not know it, but before I left the royal service, one event of personal and historical interest took place. In the summer of 1921, the first Royal Air Force Ball was held at the Ritz Hotel, and my master, the Duke of York, was the guest of honour, having joined the RAF from the Navy during the war. He gave a small dinner party at the Berkeley and then walked across to the Ritz. I was on duty, so I saw the party settled in, and then sought out my friends. Later in the evening, HRH came over to me and asked who was the girl with whom I had been dancing. I replied that her name was Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, and he asked me if I would introduce him, which I did. And that's Stuart Within the Fringe, page 57. It's James Stuart biography. The fateful meeting in the summer of 1921 actually changed history. Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon had many suitors, and under normal circumstances, fellow Scot James Stuart was the man she was most likely to marry. That never happened because James Stuart introduced Prince Albert to Elizabeth. The Catholic Stuarts looked upon the House of Annebert, Windsor, with contempt, and didn't even recognise marriages by the Church of England. So on your left, you've got James Stuart Findhorn, and then on your right, you've got James Stuart. The birth of the twins was attended by 2 of the most eminent medical men of the day, Dr. Walter Jagger, no relation to Mick, and Sir Henry Simpson. They were joined later by another physician named Sir George Blacker. Elizabeth was being tended by 2 of the eminent medical men of the day. Her obstetric miracle worker, Dr. Walter Jagger, and the obstetric surgeon, Sir Henry Simpson. When they realised that the baby was in breech position, they called in Sir George Blacker, an obstetric specialist from University College Hospital, London. Following a consultation, the 3 doctors decided to move forward with the due date from the end of the month to the earliest feasible date. And that's Campbell, the Queen Mother, page 209. Since the warming pan plot was discovered in 1688, a high official of the government had to be present at the royal birth. 3 highly qualified obstetric surgeons oversaw the delivery of the twins. They were Dr. Walter Jagger, Sir Henry Simpson, and Sir George Blacker. As required by law, Home Secretary Sir William Johnson Hicks was on hand to make sure that there was not a repetition of the warming pan plot. Here is a report of the birth of the twins from the authorised biography of the Queen Mother. Labour was introduced on the 20th of April. That's also the same date Hitler were born. And the Home Secretary and eminence, because it's important because it's on the cusp between Aries and Taurus. Okay, so it's a very important date. Is that now then? Labour was introduced on the 20th of April, and the Home Secretary, an eminent solicitor by the name of Sir William Johnson Hicks, BT,
and later 1st Viscount Brentford, duly arrived to stand guard, as required by law, when a child in direct line of succession to the throne was being born, to prevent substitution, which of course was the warming pan plot. When it became apparent that the baby could not be turned, Sir Henry made the caesarean incision, and Dr. Jagger pulled out the future Queen Elizabeth II at exactly 2:40 a.m. on the 21st of April 1926, and that again is from Campbell, The Queen Mother, page 210. Now, caesarean section, if you go biblical, it means to be not born of woman. Okay, this is why they get excited by it. We miss something if we don't travel the birth canal event being born, so that's the one to keep in mind. In a caesarean birth, there can be no firstborn. So those 3 doctors faced a major dilemma. It was solved for them later because one girl was supernaturally brilliant and the other girl seemed to be normal in every way. It was ironic that the twins almost shared a birthday with Adolf Hitler. Elizabeth tried to get pregnant again. Well, they do induce, like they did with William, to bring him in as a sun god on the 21st of June, which is the solstice, yeah? This is the game they play, folks. Where are we? It was ironic that the twins almost... No, done that. Elizabeth tried to get pregnant again right away, but her next baby was not born until 4 years later. In 1930, another princess was born to Elizabeth's lion at the haunted Glamis Castle in Scotland. So Margaret could never have been king because you've got to be born in England. She named the baby Margaret Rose after the papal patron of Scotland. Glamis Castle was the scene of Shakespeare's Macbeth and the Three Witches. Who is it? What's he called, that comedian? A very strange guy. Anyway, son of Mountbatten. Anyway, Glamis Castle was the scene of Shakespeare's Macbeth and the Three Witches. When people saw the twins together, and so you've got Glamis there on your left and Princess Margaret Rose on your right. When people saw the twins together, they were told that one twin was actually the younger sister, Margaret Rose. The twins were kept totally isolated from the peers. Total secrecy surrounded the twins from the moment of their birth. They were always accompanied by adults and were never allowed to interact or play with their peers. Adults can keep secrets, but not children, because children will tell the truth until they grow up and are corrupted by adults. Adulterers, of course, as we've discussed. The first residence of the twins was a mansion at 145 Piccadilly Close to Hyde Park. In 1932, a Scot named Marion Crawford became the children's governess, and there she is. Oof, God, that's a scary wench. Marion, ooh, my God. And on the right, left, you've got Piccadilly. By that time, Margaret Rose was only 2, and still in the cradle, so she could not join in the fun and games. Marion Crawford was recommended for the job of governess because she was discreet. Plus, she had special training in dealing with children who were different and special. I'll bet she had. Here is her account of the first day on the job. Quote, breakfast was brought to me in my room on the first morning at the Royal Lodge. But before that, I had been conscious of shrieks of laughter close at hand. An unholy din filled the air for some time. This, I learned, was the usual procedure. The little girls were having their morning session in their parents' room. This, I learned, was the usual procedure. No matter how busy the day, how early the start that had to be made, each morning began with hijinks in the parents' bedrooms. Crawford, The Little Princess, page 16. Those hijinks were the 6-year-old twins having a good time at the parents' expense. Even though they were surrounded by millions of children in London, the twins were not allowed to play with any of them. Lilibet's intellectual ability astonished her tutors, while Elizabeth was content to play with her dogs and ride horses. Even Winston Churchill was in awe of the intellectual prowess of little Lilibet when he came to visit. And again, you've got Elizabeth aged 10 and Lilibet aged 10. In 1950, Marion committed the unpardonable sin as far as the royal family was concerned. She wrote a book about her years as governess. Marion was approached by the editors of the US Ladies' Home Journal, who were anxious to improve US-British relations. By the time Marion was retired from her job and given a small cottage and a very small pension. By that time, Marion Marion had no writing skills whatsoever, but she was ably assisted by Sherman Douglas. The daughter of the US ambassador to Britain, she was offered the fantastic sum of $80,000 tax-free for her memoir, but that led to her ostracism by the royal family, who never spoke to her again. How lucky was she? Princess Elizabeth married Prince Philip in 1947. Prince Philip was the handsome Adonis who married Princess Lilibet. Philip's family was very close. So right from get-go you've had a fraud. You've had a fraud from the get-go. Yeah? Yeah. Come on, people. And so, the real Queen died. Well, did she? No, because Elizabeth took over. So we've been looking at Elizabeth for some time, afoot the throne. And so, no contract. No contract at all. And look at what's been done. Let's say from 2015. Let's say from 2019. Look at what has been done on these lands. Okay? No contract. Just because you believe it, you know, doesn't make it so. Just like you believe anything that comes on the telly, the baby boomers. And again, I'm just going to make clear, I'm not talking about you guys that come on here. I know you guys are fantastic and amazing. So I'm never speaking to you. I'm speaking in terms of the wider general public. Anyway. I've done that. Princess Elizabeth married Prince Philip in 1947. Very interesting year. Prince Philip was the handsome Adonis and a Nazi who married Princess Elizabeth. Philip's family was very close to the royal family from the beginning. Prince Philip was more of the cerebral type, and unlike Elizabeth, he was not crazy about dogs and horses. Philip was a lieutenant in the Royal Navy when he first met Lilibet. Playboy Philip was the type who liked to race cars and not horses. And then you've got Philly boy in his Nazi days, even though he's not in his Nazi uniform, and there you go, Lilibet and Philip. Philip and Elizabeth who married in a ceremony at Westminster Abbey, again, it's its own jurisdiction, recorded and broadcast by BBC Radio to 200 million people around the world. Lilibet and Prince Philip were married in Westminster Abbey on November the 20th, 1947. That was just before the dawn of the TV era, so the royals did not feel threatened by the presence of TV cameras. No, because everybody had their ear stuck to the radio back then, and whatever the radio said was the gospel. And there you've got Lilibet on her wedding day, and the wedding day of Lilibet with Philip on the right. Noticeably absent was the former King Edward VIII, and none of the German relatives of Prince Philip were invited. Princess Lilibet was crowned Queen Elizabeth II in June 1953. In January 1952, Lilibet and Philip set off on a tour of the British Empire. The first leg of that tour was to stop off in South Africa. King George VI gave the couple a bon voyage at the airport, little realising they would never see them again. On January the 31st, 1952, Princess Lilibet left London Airport for a tour of the British Empire. Just 6 days later, it was reported that King George VI died suddenly in his sleep. I bet he did. On February the 7th, Lilibet disembarked at London Airport as Queen Elizabeth II. No, she didn't. She was just in waiting. This is... Oh. And there you can see Georgie Boy saying goodbye on the left, and Lilibet arriving back at London Airport to take up the fraud. According to her private secretary Martin Charteris, Lilibet did not shed a single tear when she heard of the sudden demise of King George VI. That was not surprising, as he was not her real father. Everything was pre-arranged before the tour began. Charteris had the accession paper with him, and all Lilibet had to do was sign them and chose a new name for herself. She chose the name Elizabeth, which was the name of her twin. Oh, can you get it? Yeah? King George's line in state on the left took place at Westminster Hall from February the 9th to February the 11th. If you're looking at it, and then on the right, you've got a little bit more in the death of King George VI. The King was buried at Windsor Castle on February the 15th. Predictably, Lilibet put on a great show of mourning. Oh, I'll bet she did. Lilibet was very anxious to begin misruling her empire, but for piety's sake, a year of mourning had to be held to honour the memory of the late King George. A year? God, I'm glad we don't have a year. Mind you, they're not going to send that big fraud, are they, until next year? Just think what they can do between now and then with this other trust on there that's contracted to nobody apart from them that put her in there. Initially, the BBC was banned from filming the ceremony, but that ban was lifted when they agreed that there would be no close-up filming. Yeah, I want you to see the game, but then that back in them days, the country were full of baby boomers, and they don't watch things properly. They swoon on the emotion because they were having LSD and shit. Although that was 60s, but never mind. I think they were putting it in water, to be honest. Thanks to the communications revolution, the wedding was broadcast live via TV to the four corners of the flat earth. And there you go. Coronation of Lilibet in Westminster Abbey, aka Elizabeth. And Lilibet as the new Queen Elizabeth II on the right. Oh, she were happy. Over 8,000 guests from all over the empire attended the ceremony. General George Marshall, the US Secretary of State, who implemented the Marshall Plan, represented the United States. The coronation was the first major international event to be broadcast live on television. In 1956, Suez Canal crisis was the defining event in the reign of Lilibet. When Lilibet came to the throne, she fully expected the United States would nuke the Soviets and restore the British Empire. Little did she expect that it would actually be the beginning of the end of her empire. I don't think so. I don't think so. It's been monopolised into the banking system and the families that control it. These are just puppets, remember. These are just puppets. In October 1957, exactly 1 year after the Suez Canal crisis, Lilibet arrived in the United States to celebrate the April 1607 founding of the Jamestown colony. She was all smiles on the outside, but inside she was burning with rage at the president. Lilibet was absolutely furious at President Eisenhower for forcing the British to disgorge the Suez Canal. Inside the Velvet Glove was an iron fist determined to avenge that defeat. And there she is with Eisenhower on the left, and then the 57 Christmas message, another load of garbage propaganda. Inside in her 57th Christmas message, the Queen said that she visited 3 countries that year: Portugal, France, and the United States. Neither of the twins attended the funeral of President Eisenhower, and neither of them attended the funeral of President Kennedy. I bet they didn't. Lilibet gave the green light for the assassination of Princess Diana. Yeah. Well, I've still not found any evidence that she's dead. But she might be, who knows. There are so many bizarre similarities between the assassination of President Kennedy and the assassination of Princess Diana. Both assassinations took place in a limousine, both assassinations took place in a tunnel. What? I don't think Kennedy was assassinated in a tunnel, was it not? Okay, so that's a bit of rubbish. And both assassinations were covered up by the people at the very top of the pyramid power structure. Now, I don't think we need to go through any more, because the only thing I wanted to get across there is the fact that they've got twins and they've played a game. And you didn't have Elizabeth, you had Lilibet. So from the get-go, you've got fraud. Have you not? You know? Chair of the estates. This is what's gone on, folks. You know, they've flooded the country with lesser minds who are now kicking off because it's all they know. Yeah? And Charleses are running around giving it, I want to be a king of all faiths. Yeah? Well, for him to accomplish that would show clearly that what I say about the Church of England now is correct. It's got nothing to do with Christianity anymore. It's any Tom, Dick and Harry who will operate for the British Empire. So, right, that's that. Then what else were I going to look at? Because I just want to get it up. Oh, we've got somebody sent me something very interesting tonight, actually. I just want to run through this with you as well, just for you Americans, and that is that the Biden administration has quietly perpetuated the state of national emergency that was initiated after the 9/11 attacks, which were carried out by Islamic terrorists. I don't think so. 21 years ago this month. On Tuesday, the White House declared the alleged ongoing state of national emergency by referring to the 2001 attacks, and it said, the actions of persons who commit, threaten to commit, or support terrorism continue to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy and economy of the United States, which of course means the Federal Reserve. For this reason, the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13224 of September the 23rd, 2001, as amended, and the measures adopted to deal with that emergency must continue in effect beyond September the 23rd, 2022. Therefore, in accordance with Section 202D of the National Emergencies Act, 50 U.S.C. 1622D, I am continuing for 1 year the national emergency with respect to persons, remember, persons who commit, threaten to commit, or support terrorism declared in Executive Order 13224. And who are terrorists today? White honkies, white supremacists. Even though it's Antifa and Black Lives Matter running around rioting, causing havoc and talking absolute bollocks like they're educated. I mean, come on. And this is exactly what they're going to start now. They've started it down in Leicester and Birmingham. They've kicked it off already. These people are so thick, they don't know any better. They just happen to get on telly and look like they're doing something fantastic and amazing. So I think that's a good point to actually, I just want to show you this. Oh, wait a minute. We have this as well. So just listen carefully to this. Okay, this is the BBC. No, it's not. It's Sky News, sorry. On the day the Queen was being shifted, I think, to Windsor. Listen to this carefully, chaps.
Yes, and all the resonances there of King John and Magna Carta, and that then starting to establish the relationship between the monarchy and the people.
It did, and we then had in 1265 a parliament meeting in the very place where she has been lying in state for the last 4 years.
Lying in state for the last 4 years. I'll do that again.
For the last 4 years, Westminster Hall, and also...
And again.
Lying in state for the last 4 years, Westminster.
Okay, Freudian slip, maybe. Is it? Is it Freudian? Well, you know what I'm saying? So I thought that was interesting for you. Now let's just have a quick look at these. This is happening on our land, folks. You know, militia. I'm talking here. England. Forget Britain, British, UK, garbage. England. Now, copy. Let's bank this on here. I want you to have a listen. Just give us a sec. I just need to put it where it goes. 104 minutes. Just like this. Listen to this. Just listen to this. It's right. Listen.
Yeah, with the fact that the Durga Bhavan Hindu Resource Center was allowing extremist speeches like Sabi with Hamra to come and to keep the peace. I personally myself am a law-abiding citizen, along with all of these other brothers here are law-abiding citizens, but we cannot allow extremists to come to our cities and try to preach the extremism amongst us without any retaliation from us. We are here today peacefully protesting. As you can see, the police is here. Everything is very, very calm. Everything is very, very in the line of the law. But what we must understand, the BJP and the RSS are very much established here in the United Kingdom. And we must also now fight those organizations who financially support these individuals in United Kingdom and in Indian occupied Kashmir and in India. If we do not stand and take a stance, you've seen how our brothers and sisters in Leicester are being persecuted for no reason other than being Muslim. You've seen how the BJP has, barbarically treated our brothers and sisters. And I can tell you, each and every single one of these brothers are not here to cause any unlawful disruption, but we are here to stand for our people. This is the simple fact of the matter. We are here to stand for our people. And remember, the British Kashmiris, the British Pakistanis, the British Afghanis, the British Bengalis will stand against the BJP extremists, because we all know the RSS and what they are about. If we do not stand for our people, nobody will. And some people have mentioned that we are unlawful, that we are disrupting people, that we are causing illegal activity. There is nothing. I've been here for the last hours. The brothers are here. Their faces are concealed only due to the fact of the discrimination by the BJP, the Conservative Party and the RSS. We are not here to cause any harm, but we will defend our people and use reasonable and necessary force to stand and defend our honor. Just a quick one. I urge brothers and sisters, and remember something, the mainstream narrative will paint us out to be some extremists who are covering our face. No. We are standing here because we believe in the plight of our people. We believe that our people are being targeted for no other reason for being a Muslim. How much should we take? Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Kashmir, Lebanon, how much should the Muslim community take? We will not allow BJP activists, and moreover, if Hindu temples like this do not support the BJP or the RSS, if Hindu temples like this do not, one second. If Hindu temples like this do not stand by the BJP and the RSS, they need to come out in open official statements and state that they don't stand by the BJP and RSS. We will not accept half-hearted condemnation. We will not accept imams coming out and saying they don't stand without valid proof. We've had enough, and the people of Birmingham will stand up. Takbir!
So they're not wearing masks, he says. They're not wearing masks. They're not covering their faces. He says he's got chewing gum in his gob, and he wants everybody to stand up and say that they're not supporting this stuff when we're all very well aware, as are the police, that the mosques are full of guns and they have so many radical preachers in there. This is just ridiculous, and I'm using this because I'm saying to you Muslims out there that I know, if you're going to start following this, you don't have a chance. This guy is intellectually crippled. He has absolutely no conscience. UK, what's UK? It's a corporation. Does he know that? No. Your Quran says very clear, boys, you obey the laws of the nation you're in, not the corporation that gives you all the rules to allow you to fleece the system and rob it. You know what I'm saying? Commit fraud. You know, I'm doing this deliberately because if you start to follow this line, the Hindus will be the least of your worries. I guarantee it, you know? Anyway. So, he says that, but unfortunately, Abdul screws it. Abdul completely and utterly screws it because he's saying, he just said they're not actually going to, you know, they're not breaking any laws or unlawful or anything like that. But Abdul, unfortunately, didn't get that memo. And you can listen to this. Are you ready? Oh. Shit. Cut that up. Hang on.
You and your boys. Abdul Berman, who's actually made these vicious statements, and we're getting information that he's the concerned individual who might have been now arrested by the Coventry police. Let's listen to what he in fact had said.
You and your boys, with your skinny little arms, your 2-3 inch arms, your 2-3 inch biceps, I've got a message for you. And that message is, we don't care where you're from. You're coming in our ends now. You're coming in our area. We don't care what group you belong to. But we are people who are from Birmingham, who will eat you alive. So you and your boys, and you want to attack Muslims, we will defend the honor. Well, we will defend the honor of Muslims. And if Muslims are walking on the streets and they're getting attacked by individuals who are terrorists, who say they're peacemakers, vegans, vegetarians, we pathetic individuals, and we're ready to deal with you.
So Abdul's coached up completely. Oh my God. Anyway, I believe this guy's been arrested. He went into hiding, but they've actually arrested him. So I'm just putting that forward because it's obviously this is being played out now. This is another game on our land to cause havoc, divert attention, and just basically tear up peace. But you know, this is what we've imported here on our land. Other people's garbage. You know what I'm saying? It's just under the fake queen and now her fake big-eared offspring. Good God. And yet the baby boomers, it's nothing to do with them. It's not their fault. It's not their fault because they're far too fantastic and amazing to take responsibility for the fact the country went to shit because they weren't paying attention. Oh, God's sake. You know what I'm saying? But so I had to just put that out because it's just going to get silly. You can see it. It's going to get silly, innit? You know? Right, what do you guys have to say so far? Funny how they can say how many killed, but when C19 took ages to get the numbers. Well, I've seen the graphs. They're quite ridiculous. I mean, I was quite shocked at how many people on the first one went for it. What an infantile, retarded nation I'm living in. You know? Good day, sir. We've done that. Hello, James. Stanford Drew says, did you... Yeah, National Insurance. James, have you got some data for that? I really need to see that. I really do need to see that, my friend. Support Sean hit. Yeah, thank you. Shared on Facebook, me pit. What for shared on Facebook, my friend? Says they live. Says they're not stopping NI. No, I can't understand that being a fact unless it possibly something they could do if they shifted everybody into no hide. That's quite possible because they'd have you on something completely different, wouldn't they? You'd be on the Jerusalem Bank for a start. So they can rob it. Now, I've learned some very worrying. I can't discuss it because it's an ongoing case at the moment. But I've been told some absolutely profound and terrifying information in relation to identity theft. So, oh my word. And that's all I can say. I can't go into it, but honestly, oh my god. So they're not. I see Andrew was wearing ER on shoulder, but Harry wasn't. Well, it was just a load of shit in it, you know. I mean, what they're trying to do is, see, I've said before, the last nation to be destroyed, according to the protocols, is England, because they've used it as the front all the time. Now it has to be destroyed and moved into the no hide. Yeah. So this is deliberate, all this stuff. They want it to come out like this, but what they want is everybody to jump on board with Harry. Now, I know people who've served with Harry, and they say he's an absolute little fucking shit. He's a up his own arse, hoity-toity little toss bag, that nobody would want him anywhere near him in any kind of combat. So nobody wants to get behind Harry as some kind of rebel, because all he'll do with his imp is tear down England as a system, as a constitutional monarchy. It's nothing to, that's not what we need to get these puppets out. We need to get the bankers off the control, which means we're going to have to start looking at these landed owners here, because they're not an English aristocracy. Regardless of what name they've took, they are not English, they're not Scottish, they're not Welsh, okay? This is how important it is, and this is why militia was created on England, okay? This is why. The same way Legion was created in Rome. It's the same thing. Not what you see when the films. When Legion were originally created, it was based on us as people being ready to be called up to protect the realm. Militia is a take on that and was around before Alfred even. You know, before, I mean, you know, all the laws that we hold dear as common law were England before Alfred. Because Wales was England. It wasn't, well, Wales or whatever they want to call it, but the Britons were in Wales. You know, that's where they were, and Cornwall. Right, that's the rant. So, which alt media website is this from? Well, I've seen this before. Anyway, there's no secret that the twins were born. So we stopped doing it because we didn't need to get into that. But what I want to get across to people is they've been twins. You think they're not going to use them? Damn right they are. Damn right they are. I mean, you've got to remember, after the Diana event, the royal family run off and didn't really come out of the game for 10 years. They couldn't believe the outpouring of grief that people showed for the loss of Diana. I mean, I was watching it. There were hardly anybody there for this funeral. Do you remember the flowers outside Buckingham Palace when Diana died? Or when Diana was removed? That terrified them. You can't give them a clearer message than that. And since that time, although the baby boomers forgot again because they're on too many pills and meds, but we didn't like the royal family for that 10-year period, did we? They started to creep back. And you'd all forgotten, because Coronation Street, Hilda had died, you know, all these people had died in soaps, which were far more important than Diana. There you go. Huh? Let's have a look here. Gary says, looking at Leicester, I'd say there's third player with the medal on their side, probably using a compass and square. Well, no, Masonic. You've got to take on board Saladin and the Templar. Richard did a deal. That's why we've been flooded here. Now, there's a Jesuit priest that came out, 15 years ago. What were he called? I can see his face. He made it very clear that Rome created Islam to be sword. You know, see, wherever you go in this garbage, it goes back to Rome. All of it. The Holy See. You see, this is the problem. You mention Rome and people say Vatican. The Vatican is the church. Rome is the Holy See, which controls both the Vatican and the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire were given to Portugal and Spain way back in the day, which is why the colonisation began. Portugal and Spain first. The mind boggles with the royal family. It does, deliberately so. They just want us to go away with it so they can install this no-hide over everything. This is what England needs to come again. We need to stop. All this Leicester, Birmingham, it's all garbage to divert us off what's really going on. But focus right now to what they're doing while we've no monarch and a fruit bat Prime Minister that has no contract to you at all. No contract to the realm, as is Charles. No contract to the realm at all. None. The mind bog, yeah. She was chairman of the Committee of 300. Yeah, I've heard that, but I'm not sure. Remember, these are puppet families. They're not the real royal families to this nation. I mean, the Stuarts were way more real as should-be kings than any of the others, you know? And let's be frank, both James and Charles were staunch Protestants. Charles was fighting against the Puritans, not the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church was fighting against the Puritans. The Babylonian priesthood, the banking dynasties, that's where they had the power. The Venetians, the Genoans. Yeah? You study history of Byzantine's destruction. Venetians, Genoans, they were in the thick of it. They were the ones that shafted Byzantium and allowed the encroachment of the Persians, who then converted to Islam. They're all puppets, lying in state for the last 4 years. Exactly. But then with the twin thing, what's important that we understand is, we've had somebody, I mean, when would the Queen, the old Queen, the real Queen, have ever, even though I thought it was a real good thing to do when she did that walk-in with James Bond. I mean, that was just fantastic. And if she'd have been the real Queen, that would have been the amazing video ever to be made. But that wasn't the case. We've been dealing with a twin. She doesn't have to give a shit. She were always happy. When did you ever see Queen happy before? Unless you were at a race course. You know what I'm saying? No. You know, that's the point I'm trying to get across with that we've been looking at a twin. Now when we don't, so it's 2018, 2019, take your pick. But it's the twin side of things that I'm getting across to you that's important. Video keeps going blank, audio is fine though. Well, that's good. Yeah. Religion screws up the mind. Well, we're going to get into that with it when we get onto this etymology again, because it's a bit shorter this time, so I'm going to do it in 3. Links. Shared cake, Sean. Show me this show, mate. Shared cake? I'm not sure what you mean there, matey. You went on street in UK, anyone seen this? Should we be speaking to Ivan Talbot, Earl of Shrewsbury? Well, is he a Britisher or is he an Englishman? If he's an oh, yeah. Now then, yeah, that's right. You just reminded me there, yeah. You said you were going to put me in contact with this guy, didn't you? Do it. Let's make this right, because I forgot all about that. I'm sorry, I've been a bit... This last couple of months has been horrendous for me. I've not been on form. I've not been able to do what I've been doing. Because I've been let down all over the show. This year's been fucking shit. That's all I can say. Absolute pish. So I forgot all about that Stanford Truth. Make that connection. I want to speak with this guy. You're right. I forgot all about this fella. So, yeah, okay. We need our own enforcement. Militia. England sanctions militia. Service of the realm, which means service of law. Not UK policy, not this, and any foreign entity on the land that's opposing the realm, English law. Yeah, that's what you're dealing with here. So that's police, it's politicians, these royals, all these foreign cultures. If they're operating against the law, England sanctions militia to do whatever. And treason, which is English law, you get hung. Or if you want to go follow Henry VIII, we boil them alive. So it is. That's the way English law works. Treason, you get hung. That's it. What can I say? Right, so now let's get to this etymology, because it just gets better and better. Let me just get rid of that. Now then. So this is part 2. I'm not going through everything we went through before, because if we can pull this together. I'm going to write. It's all going to be written up on my website, so it'll be complete as a written thing. Because on this one I've added so much myself. Even if you went back to the original source, you wouldn't get what I'm putting in here. So part 2, it says the religious chant of Om is pronounced the same way as Om. To keep Sol, the moon, on, we must continue our religious belief in the matrix reality. I'm just going to stop there because you can't see this, can you? I need to bring this up for you. Sorry about that, chaps. Right. It's not going to transition. No. So we need to... what? That's not what I want. I want that. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I can get it up this way. I'm starting to suss this, Streamlabs. The religious chant of Om is pronounced the same way as Om. To keep Sol, the moon, on, we must continue our religious belief in the matrix reality while also offering up our sexually charged electrical Om to erect the fires of the dragon. Thus we can see the term dragon as drag on, the extension cord, so the dead sun remains plugged in, which is the moon. In this manner, we can understand what the ruling member of an elite family communicated in his refusal to breed. Obviously, he believes this data. So the ruling, you remember we went through those, the ruling family member who was saying he didn't breed. He doesn't breed at all. This guy is operating according to this kind of doctrine. Now, for me, what this isn't the truth. This is the mimic. This is the mimic that they've created. So even if that's the case, even the ruling guy has fallen foul of this. So this is how all your Masonic people, if they're high enough, are operating. But for me, this is garbage, okay? But it's in play and it's the power. So it's important that we understand what game they're playing. In this manner, we can understand what the ruling member of the elite family communicated in his refusal to breed. Obviously, he believes this data. In essence, to continue this matrix according to this data, the egg inside the woman's moonstruck menstrual cycle is coordinated with the movement of the moon. The prefix of mens from menstrual is a Latin word meaning mind, plan, intention, pointing out that copulation is immaculately carried out within the framework of our minds, since we are all separated by our iPods. It can also be said to be a plan. Some say plan ET, or planet, yeah? But I would suggest, so this is mine, but I would suggest that the plan may have root outside the physical, but is carried out by man. Should we forsake the idea that the original plan was benevolent and that the fallen mimic the original creation? That's gone up my own arse here a bit. So I'm trying to say that there is the original, which you can find in the creation story, but a little bit. But this is what the priesthood of Babylon are operating to, and this is how they're using. They're mimicking it, and they've created this theatre, use of words. So no matter what language you're talking, your language will be incorporating this garbage. Now, it's definitely Masonic, without a doubt, but Masonic are not the head of the game. They're just the building side of it, of the sciences. In fact, I've just reminded me, I've read a report about that. I might have to look at that next week and maybe present it to you. The lost seaman that is discharged makes an electric connection with the moon and then receives rescue from the saviour light of Jesus, who fishes out the seaman from the torment of the electric sea. Here is a quote from Jesus. And Jesus said unto them, Come ye after me, and I will make you become fishers of men. Mark 1:17. Now Mark, forget it. Luke is the only gospel anybody should be talking about. Luke is the only gospel that never, ever, ever calls the man Jesus a rabbi. He never calls him a rabbi. He didn't include any of the Babylonian Second Temple crap. None of it. None of it. We should also see this to be somewhat similar to the Grail story's inclusion of the wounded fisher king. The Latin word sus translates as a kind of fish. And as we know, Jesus heralded in the age of Pisces, which of course is the fish. Man is said to be born into sin. Where am I? Oh, I've got lost. Man is said to be born into sin, which is the moon. And the anatomy shows this with the semen being born inside the moon egg. To correlate with the religious teachings, G from Jesus is French for I and sus. Sorry guys. Oh God. To correlate with the religious teachings, G from Jesus is French for I, and sus is Latin for a kind of fish. Thus the seamen that are being fished out by the all-seeing eye of Jesus. Why? Why? Well, because the meaning of life is Y. So there's on Y chromosomes. We are birthed by the alien mothership moon. By believing we are born through a human mother and her hips, seeing that the bananagram for ships is hips. What? Why did I write that? I think I might have... I'm sorry about that, chaps. I might have cocked that up a bit. For me, this is how we can see that this data is a mimic of the ancient doctrines. Are pretty clear that in the beginning there was no moon. Well, that's true. You look back to some of the old ancient, especially from Native Americans, there was no moon originally. So the moon is something else, which is why I said before that for me, the gateway into this realm is the sun itself. And obviously before, when the firmament was here, you couldn't see the sun as we see it now. We were in a sort of mist, a bit like England growing up in the 70s. We just had a mist. That's all it ever were, a mist. And then it were winter. And that was pretty much our weather back then. If we go back to the marriage oath, or in a marriage ceremony, or ceremony, there is a groom, which is by definition in English, a horse groomer. Relating to the bride, we go to the English old word team, which meant descendant, family, race, line, and brood, which came out of the old Frisian word tam, for bridal, progeny, line of descent. To brood something is to sit on eggs, to hatch them, and the bride is getting bridled by the groom to create more children, which she will have which she will have to brood in her womb, so that the egg will hatch and create another fetus. A bride is the headgear put on a horse to control it. This is how the priesthood have set up the game to serve them as a mimic of the natural order of things between a male and a female. It is the marriage ceremony and its legal connotations that bind the legal persona to the system, and then binds two trusts as well. Today we call this normal, but the word normal comes etymologically from the Latin word norma, which means carpenter's square. So when we looked at Norma Partington back in last year, when we were looking through the police systems, they used the term norma because it denotes the carpenter's square. The Freemasons declare that everything for everyone must be made fair and square. Fair or fair, by definition, means food that is regularly consumed. And a square can also be food, as in 3 squares a day. So that's 3 square meals. It is also a fair because this is a circus, which is the Latin word for circle or orbit. So you're on the merry-go-round. Boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. Never going anywhere. You're neither going up or you're neither going down. That's the system they've set up for everybody. And the baby boomers have lived on that system all their life. A square is also an English verb that means... I know I call it baby boomers. It's only because you need to wake up out of your stupid slumber while you've still got power and wealth before they take it. A square is also an English verb that means to turn the oar while rowing, since we are the Latin neo that is being spun and weaved while we roll through this existence while we are awake. A wake is a track that is left by a ship as it moves through the water, but is also someone who keeps watch over a corpse before it's buried. A watch is a device that keeps time, and in astrology this is known as the god Kronos, which is the embodiment of Saturn, hence chronological time. So chronological, yeah? This is because Saturn is where the urn is sat. This is why the religious idea of the Sabbath falls on the Saturn day, the last day of the 7-day week, and where the dead or debt of sin is ended only to be passed to your children. Of course, I again can see a mimic of the real meaning to the Sabbath, which is once your work is done in your life. So I've said this before, the true meaning to the Sabbath is you're down here until you achieve what it is you're here to achieve. You ain't having no Sabbath. You won't get the rest you want. The system, the legal system that they set up has gone against that because it decides that you get a Sabbath as a retirement. But ultimately, down here, there is no Sabbath or day of rest until you've achieved what it is you're supposed to achieve. So that goes back to the Babylonian priesthood, mimicking that. It says, of course, I again see the mimic of the real meaning of Sabbath, which is once your work is done in life, you can rest. In this manner, there is no other start again. So that's the thing, once you achieve that here, there isn't another start again. You're not starting again, are you? You're in rest. Then you're going to pass. Everything these elites believe is fantasy, a mimic of the real to capture you and keep you off the real game you were set at your conception. Souls are thus captured, which they are, which is Satan's job, to capture souls. Yeah? So you're captured from the minute you're born until the day you die, because you don't realise that. You're off on a retirement, you're dossing. Kronos is depicted as eating his children, because we are the children in the attic, if you are indeed a child or a ward of the state, which is what child defines as, a ward of the state. So a ward of the state of the moon, who are sent to Saturn. So I'll do that again. Kronos is depicted as eating his children, because we are the children in the attic, and in brackets, if you are indeed a child or a ward of the state, of the moon who are sent to Saturn. There is a suggestion that in this event we are eaten because we are in the Garden of Eden or Eden. Marriage is called a ceremony, because cera is the Latin word for lock and is cognate with the Latin serum, that means late and slow in the Latin. When a woman conceives a child and first becomes pregnant, she misses her period and states she is late. She has therefore missed a period and begins a new life sentence. So doesn't that bring the rabbit, the white rabbit and the clock, who's always late? Yeah? So all this stuff in Disney and all these films is basically playing around with this data. Yeah? That's what it is. This is the data that they're all symbolising. It doesn't mean they're symbolising reality, just the reality under this moon god. In English, serum is known as the watery fluid in blood that resembles plasma but contains what is known as fibbing. As also connected with the moon, the Italian word sera means evening, night and vesper. Vesper in the Latin translates as evening star, evening meal, indicating the moon and the food of the gods. The Turkish word sera means conservator, forcing house, greenhouse. This is what brooding an egg does. It forces the living being inside to hatch faster, so that it can be used for food more quickly by that which is forming it. The farmers of humanity are convincing everyone to produce another fetus, because the god farmers are saying that the humans need to feed us. Phonetically, fetus translates as feed us. A venture into the word garden, as we relate it, the term Eden has been suggested to be eaten. What else is produced in a garden? The etymologists have been unfair in the assessment of where the word garden was derived. There are some more factual connections. Garden goes back to the Indo-European languages, starting with the words gur and gird, meaning to grasp and to enclose, and the term gordo for an enclosed land yard of garden, exactly what Charles I opposed. So Charles I was opposing enclosure. This went into the Avestan and Old Persian languages as zar, meaning to harm, and azara for oppressed. The Greek language was given these terms, and from them got the word xorus, meaning an enclosed dancing group. Yet also the words xronos and chronos for that which encloses all things or time. So Charles I was fighting against the Puritans who were bringing in this pish, yeah? And he was a Protestant fighting against the Puritans, yeah? Where am I there? Oh yeah. Existence is also phonetically eggs is tense, existence. And one cites it is time to remit your payment, since the word timer is remit spelt backwards. The Latin language twisted the Greek chronos into the word chronicus, that went into the French word chronique and gave the English language chronic, chronicle and chronological, and chronometer. From the Indo-European gur and gird, the Germanic languages, including English, acquired the words yard, orchard, garden and kindergarten, also known as kindergarten. If there is a kindergarten, there is also a not-so-kind one, as displayed by the etymology of using oppressed and harmed, while being enclosed by time, the chronological time of Cronus Saturn. Now, I have discussed this before, but Froebel created a system in Germany back in the day where he realised if you use shapes, you could really get into the mind of a child. Okay? Now, I've done a report and I'll put it up under this video, but it's well worth looking at because, and we've also added the actual document that I'm talking about, which is that Tavistock took the Froebel system out to Germany, tweaked it, sent it back to Germany and educated the Third Reich, the brown shirts, okay? Today it's the same format but the green shirts, okay? And because they want to educate everybody, it's climate change, alright? So that's one you really need to look at. So this is kindergarten stuff, yeah? Where am I? The DER in kindergarten is also an acronym meaning distributed energy resources, which should be self-explanatory at this stage. The Latin language derived the word hortus straight from the Indo-European gordo. Hortus literally means garden, and the English language adopted the term and made the words horticulture, courtesy and court. Thus all legal courts are representatives of the gardening gods of Saturn. One could say that this is administration courts, because they're not actually courts, are they? You get into history of courts in English, it's not quite this. So, this is what we're pushing on civil war, in my opinion. Only one could say that the serum of the bloodline is what is being sought on this planet, and the horse connections just keep on coming. Before the mere age, there is a stag party. A stag is the term used to denote a young stallion. We then have the honey moon, which is the mimic, which in the mimic can be said to be the oath to the Queen of Persians, now a king, so that's Charles and Elizabeth. The mere-ede couple thus become hitched to the mere-age wagon, and are going to produce another product called a baby, who will be able to make more honey. Now, the original honeymoon term is the fact that you have a week where you're just in bed, aren't you? Originally learning each other, and hopefully a child would come. So it's a distortion of what was, as I said, a mimic, and this is the Masonic mimic. Where do the parents that call each other honey and baby put their newborn baby? Is it not a baby carriage? The carriage that is drawn out of the mother water by the two horses, if not a carriage, then certainly a crib, which is an English synonym for pony. The carriage is actually the moon, as depicted in such fairy tales as Cinderella. Phonetically, Cinderella, which again indicates the moon, where the horse-drawn carriage turns into a pumpkin at midnight, because the languages have always told us this. Language, remember, is the language, that it's the weapon that's sent from beyond, way back into the future to keep that system going. Maybe I should have gone through what we'd gone through before, but never mind. Where are we? Phonetically, Cinderella, which again indicates the moon. No, I've done that. The Albanian here means moon, pumpkin, and the Hindi kanda also reports as moon, pumpkin, and target. It is spelled out as candy because people put a candle inside. It's candy because people put a candle inside a pumpkin for Halloween, as you celebrate the mimic of the original meaning as you focus to all things darkness and death. The original Halloween ritual, the pagan ritual, had nothing to do with death and darkness like this. It's been completely shifted. And of course, it's always been the Americans that have celebrated it in the way they do. Now it's come here. But if you really understood what you were actually celebrating by doing this nonsense, you wouldn't do it. To hallow something is to religiously venerate and worship it. To wean is to gradually deprive either of the mother's milk or to detach the affections of someone to something. Given the current celebration of Halloween is but a mimic of the old pagan rite, is a shift to have you celebrate the dead and detach from the living. This cements the identifying with the person and of the living man. If we take the pumpkin to be a symbol of the moon, then in placing a candle inside as we do, then this could be symbolic of the fact our light is trapped within the moon, not to feed our own life, but as a trapped entity feeding the moon gods. If we remember that Jack is a plug and also a knave, beholden to the pantheon of king and queen, then we can see that the Jack is a slave and is plugged into something so that power can be drawn from it to serve something else. A candle can be said to represent our life force at a bare minimum, so it's our life force at the least it can be, of electrical luminosity. So in doing this, we're not shining as we should. Del, from the phonetic candel, is a Hungarian word that means noon, and south indicating why the carriage turns into a pumpkin at midnight. This is a metaphor towards the full moon, since the hands on the clock would have to be pointed at noon to indicate midnight, whereas the south is pointing towards the southern path or left-handed way of the Sanskrit Varmakara, which is also indicating the midnight dark of the noon. Position on the clock, or back on the clock again. That film with Tom Hanks, what is it called? Where he's on a desert island. That's all about the clock. You've got FedEx in there. You should watch that film and with this kind of etymology in mind, and it'll mean something completely different to you. South is also said to be the insignia of the all-seeing eye of Horus and the hidden one known as Ra-Amen. Now, I have a different take on the original, but of course we're dealing with a mimic here, aren't we? A distorted take on what was and what is. Humans are thus said to be given the task by the fate gods to pump out more kin for sin, which of course is the moon. This is why the baby carriage turns into a pumpkin at midnight. So kin, of course, is kindred, isn't it? So it's your family. Back to the horse analogy, we can say we are born with the head of hair that eventually grows into a mane, which is hair that grows about the neck on a horse, but also on people. The head of hair also has bangs, and the German word pony agrees with this by translating into English as pony, fringe and bangs. This is the reason you can tie your hair back into a ponytail. The Indonesian pony also translates as bangs. Now, I'm not sure what bangs is. You might need an hairdresser for that. While the Dutch word pony means pony, bangs and hobby. Hobby is a term used to denote the management of time, and the word manage is derived etymologically from the Italian menagere, meaning to control a horse. So a hobby basically is you describing how you manage your time, yeah, outside of work, as it were, for the moon god. If not at work being managed by a manager, there are police officers who are ready to take down the bad batteries, whereas a police constable is there to service law. Can you better see the difference? A police officer is a police, ready to arrest persons who are seen to be revolting against their handlers or controllers. In electrical terminology, an arrestor is a short form term for the surge arrestor, which is a device that limits surge voltage by deleting it. It is not what the police do to a revolting criminal. Is this not what a police do to a revolting criminal? Interesting. They delete him or her from society until they face their charges in a star court. If the police are rough, the person arrested may claim that such rough handling hurts, as in megahertz, them. Remember that court was derived from the Latin hortus, which means garden, and thus we have the guardians of the court. In court you face the battery box priest known as the judge, who receives the charges placed upon the defendant by the plaintiff. The suffix of tiff from plaintiff means a quarrel about petty points, and to plain something is by definition to express complaints, discontent and unhappiness about an issue. This comes from the word plaint, which is a written statement or cry of sorrow and grief, of the grounds of the complaint made to a court to ask for grievance to be redressed. A petty is someone who is inferior to someone else in rank and status. The complaint or charge needs the grounds to stand on, because all electrical charges need a ground that acts as the connection between the electrical device and the conducting body. The court is the ground where the charges are brought against you, the battery operated electrical device, by the police or police. Once the game in court is finished, the battery box priest delivers the recharges as the defendant, where he or she may have to get recharged in a prison cell, because the cell is a battery. The person given the recharges is called the defendant, because they are deaf end ant. The definition, that is a word of the court who is meeting its end by the priest judge that has sworn an oath to Saturn, as shown by the Turkish word ant, that means oath, vow, pledge. The judge who sits in their power box ready to recharge the definition with a prison term or sentence, a sentence that will be repeated over and over again until the definition hears it and gets it. That is why all the garden court groundings are called hearings, because the judge assumes that they are dealing with a dead and definition, who does not get the definitions of the words being used. We are thus the weird words of the God of God, the moon gods, which is the mimic of the word of God, because we are the humans, or a shade of man, who are being thrown into the coloured spin cycle and world, not the earth, remember, by the lesser gods who have declared themselves as gods above us. Now remember, I've made it clear there's a difference between earth, the God that created the earth in Genesis, and the world. The world is controlled by Satan. Satan offered the world to Jesus. He told him to piss off. Yeah? Couldn't offer him the earth, because Satan only operates the world. Yeah? Now then, the word end from deaf end ant is also a terminal, as we have already discussed, and this is shown in the German language, where the German end means terminal, and not forgetting that horse is phonetically whore, because it is the whore of Babylon that we are dealing with. The English word end translates into the Swedish word slut. The Norwegian language agrees, since it takes the English word end and turns it into the word slut. And now this is why I don't believe that the original church that they set up was anything that they're telling us. I think that what they've done, they've projected it back and put it on Justinian, yeah, and all these other popes. And I'm not having it. I'm not having it at all, to be honest, because you couldn't have built such a great Western civilization in what was France and England before all the shit. On this, he couldn't have done it. It wouldn't have worked. So look. The English word "end" translates into the Swedish word "slut." The Norwegian language agrees, since it takes the English word "end" and turns it into the word "slut." The priesthood sends the defendant to the warden, hence ward of the court, and warden, because that's what a prison is, a den of war prisoners. They were once the ants that were part of the colony, but were taken out by the police and are now serving sentences. They serve the sentences because a judge is also a steward of the garden or court. A steward is a ship's officer who is in charge of provisions and dining arrangements. All good stewards know how to grow a good garden of food, and the prisoners were taken out because they were not participating in the growth of the garden society, like obedient food energy batteries. The German word "gar" is an adjective meaning cooked, because we are cooked in the den, the garden, as food for the gods when we enter the terminal, as the Turkish word "gar" tells us, with a meaning of station terminal. If not the police, excuse me, who are going to put you on ice by the Poles, there is always the other term of constables, who do the same job according to the laws of the nation. The term constable is derived from the Latin stabule, meaning officer of the stable. There is also the Latin term stabularis, which carries the Latin synonyms corpo and copo, which is why the police are also called cops. Take note that I've always wondered why they were called cops. Pigs, yeah, I understand. Pigs in the farmyard. But cops. So now we know it's Latin. Where am I? Take note that all courts, gardens will display the corporate flag of the country they are in with a yellow fringe, or bangs, hung across the bottom of it, because they want it to inform everyone that their court system is dealing with horse-shore slaves, who only have temporary liberty. Remember, the word manager or boss is simply a synonym for master. When there is a master, there has to be a slave. We find yet more data to connect the horse and slave when we consider the word jockey, which is a synonym of the word screw. Screws are those who guard prisoners. Screw is also a slang term to denote sexual intercourse, and also to screw someone is to defeat them through trickery and deceit. Sexual metaphors are an essential ingredient if you are to understand what the mimic of creation is all about. In terms of screwing someone through trickery and deceit, is it not the case that this is going on all day, every day, against all of you as person in the war game called commerce and business? Now, this is pretty much my bit, this, because I didn't really like what he was saying. Neither of which are classified as trade. So there's a distinction between trade and commerce and business, right? They're two different things. So, like, people can do shit things to each other and they go, I'm doing business. It's business. Bullshit. You're a fucking fruit bat, and don't ever pretend that you're anything other than an arsehole. If all you ever do in your life, when you're dealing with your friends and family, is do business, this is what you're a part of, right? You're operating for the freak show. Right, so look. Trade is free as relates to unfettered decision making, because all facts are present, whereas commerce is a game. It's why I've written this, it's nothing to do with that video. Whereas commerce is a game in which a deception takes place, which has you pay way over the odds for what in a simple trade would be a straightforward exchange. Commerce is a parasite on trade, incurring lots of costs that are not necessary to the exchange itself. Extras such as tax, fees, insurances, etc. In essence, both the seller and the purchaser become a vassal for the parasite by allowing the parasite to take the huge amount of fees that benefit only the parasite. So now this is how I've always explained this. Example. So let's say I have a bottle to sell at £10 sterling, okay? You are the purchaser and you agree the price of £10, okay? The deal is agreed, it's done. I receive the £10, you receive the bottle. That's it, trade's over. No bullshit, everything's on the table, that's the bottle, that's the sale, that's the price. That's it. There is no bullshit, no hidden, nothing. Okay, that's trade. Yeah. So the trade is then complete. With commerce involved, and this is how important this is, the seller receives the £10, right? So I, as the seller, only get 10 quid. But you as the purchaser have to pay 60 quid. Yeah? So if you're paying 60 quid, where the fuck's the 50 quid gone? Because it's not gone to me. That's it. Right? So the purchaser has to pay £60 sterling because £50 of that has been invented. And it goes to the parasite for what is basically nothing of value to either the seller or the purchaser. That is money out of nothing, ladies and gentlemen. Is it not? That's magic. Yeah? Come on. So which do you want? Trade or commerce? Yeah? Do you want to pay £10 or do you want to pay 60 quid? Yeah? Cut out the middleman, the parasite. It's not required. Now, example. I have a bottle to... I've done it. Commerce and business are a form of warfare. So commerce and business are separate from trade, are a form of warfare, which is why they use the term beating their competition. Because the legal definition that is used when someone gets beaten and brings their oppressor to court to face those charges is called battery. Once the huge parasitic empire is formed, unlike trade, which is mutually beneficial, commerce is war in which one battery moves against another until one battery is beaten. This format plays out in sport, which requires division of the batteries to the point its players and fans literally go to war against each other, both in the field, which is the actual sport itself, and the commercial sales of goods, and on the terraces. Because, I mean, what football hooliganism? Come on. They're at war. It's a game, but they're at war. So you see what I'm saying with that? Commerce and sport in and of itself is actually encouraging you to behave in a manner that's war. In essence, trade is mutually beneficial as commerce is war, and one has to hate to become successful at commerce. The masses are there to swoon on one side to further that hate towards another. This breeds groups of those who benefit through the projection of hatred, and yet more batteries to be set before the courts for sentence. So it feeds the whole cycle. A vicious cycle will best describe this mechanic, which is nothing more than a circus for those at the head of these groups, with the lesser batteries being the circus animals to be led and beaten at the whim of the lesser gods. Yeah? We should also note the term stock market, stock being the term for farmers and their animals. Thus, when we transfer this reality to the human zoo, one can see you become the livestock being bought and sold, as in soul, by the lesser gods and their minions. This circus is the means by which the lesser gods encourage you all to break the ultimate spiritual law of treating your fellow man as you would have yourself be treated. Thus, in following the circus, you are indeed existing in the sin to which you were born. On this basis, all the cry and moans offered up to your God are not in any way being received by the Creator. Your cries are sent to the God of your choice, which is Mammon, and that's what you're doing. You're asking God for money and goods. You're speaking to Mammon. And so, in that sense, who is innocent in this circle of livestock? Nobody. You're in it. It's a war. You win, you lose. Now, religion is perhaps the more first move into this circus of hate. Because from the day you are born, you are taught to see the difference in the religion you are born under to those around you. Hate is the currency of the lesser gods, because fear and hate are the main methods of creating the electrical energy the moon gods demand. Everything is serving the moon. Everything serves the shackle that binds you to sin. Thus, religion is the backdrop to ensure all hate the other in readiness for your obligation to commerce and the circus of the dead. By golly. So there we go. And again, there's going to be part 3 to that because it just gets even better. And as I've said, once I've completed this, I'll put it up on the website so it's a full script. So you don't have to keep going between these bloody videos or whatever to get the full take. But I do encourage you to go with this side because the guy that did the other did it a few years ago. And I think he'll give you a better idea and understanding of the concept because of the additions that I've given it. So that's me bigging myself up there a little bit just before I go up my own arse. Let's have a look at what you guys are doing and saying before we call this. Oh my God, you've been chatting. Right, so we're going to go through these. Right, so where are we? Video keeps got who done that. Share cake, okay. Should we be speaking to Ivan Talbot? Yeah, yes. Put me in. Get in contact with me again with that. I completely forgot. I'm so sorry, India. I really forgot about that. You know, but I've had a shit last 6 months. It's shit. We do need our enforcement. We have a duty when authorities fail. You do if you're holding up England, okay? If you want to be man proper, you don't really want to get involved in any of it. Just watch from the sidelines so they all destroy each other. But I love this nation. It was the freest of them all at ground level. I don't care what the fruit bats are doing, but at ground level, when I was growing up, the freedom was just amazing. I used to walk through town with a shotgun over my shoulder, bandoliers of shotgun cartridges everywhere, and nobody batted an eyelid. Do you know why? Because they knew I weren't trying to murder anybody. They knew I would obviously go and shooting. You know what I'm saying? You did that today, you'd have DEFCON 6 and 24 million armed fruit bats all over you. Because they're scared of stuff like that. They're scared of stuff like that because they know they're being assholes. They know they're doing wrong and they're at war with you. It's as simple as that. And if you think you're only in while they have a use for you. Neon, yeah. I once used to try that, and it doesn't bring a good frequency to you. So I never did it again. I'll tell you that now. I sent you this email. I will send it again in the morning. Thanks, Joe. You sent it me, did you? Alright. Well done for that. Okay. Sweet. Well, I'm confused. But somebody were talking to me about this that actually communicates with this guy, Shrewsbury guy. So if it's not you, my apologies. But anyway. I'd forgot about that. Evening, my old mucker. Evening, all his atom. The Rosicrucians knew this. It was part of the secret teachings. They live, we sleep. Link for UN in London. Nothing on YouTube. Okay. And Ray's given us one there. On the mist, is this the vapor cloud? On the mist, is this the vapor cloud? It was the firmament. Yeah, we were entirely encased in a vapor cloud. So when you get into the flood narrative proper, not the fruit bat stuff that the religions give you, the flood was caused not from the sea. It fell out of the fucking sky. The waters. That's what happened. So why people think, you know what I'm saying? And it wasn't rainfall in the sense that we'd see it. The whole thing just fell out of the bloody sky. The firmament fell, you know. Let's have a look. Are you UN UK? What do you mean, Ray? They live, we sleep. Yeah, that's true. Treen, I'm late. Treen, you badden! Oh, you're going to have to go into a week of detention and any more, young lady, and I'm going to have to take you into this room and spank your bottom with my hand. Yeah, and bare bottom, by the way, as well. I just thought I'd tell you. You just can't keep doing this, Treen. It's not good. Hands, face, space, nothing to say. I mean, come on. I mean, when you look back at what's been and these phrases, and are you not ashamed of yourself if you fell for this? I know you aren't going on, but are you not ashamed of yourself that you fell for this? For them that are murdering you? And, oh, I mean, we'll not get into that because I don't want to run risk of getting YouTube excited because they get excited on these phrases because they're important. Good info with the link rate. Have you? Oh, you not got the note. But always on the back foot. She's bad, is that Treen? I'm telling you. I mean, I'll tell you who's missing here. Debbie. What's happened to the Debbie? Is she naughty? Is she gone? She's run off. You must not. Okay, well, we'll give you some lines then, Treen, first. We'll give you lines. A time is there, Treen. It's 20. Yeah, she's a bad one, I'm telling you. You may give you a pardon as they did new relatives. Well, we will pardon you, but you are very naughty. It's just becoming too consistent, young lady. I might have to send a letter back to your parents. Same time here, I think, Scotland, beside the Thames. Oh yeah, Treen's in Scotland. The Hockney News, the Haggis Pipers. Are you watching as well? Is my mate watching? But anyway, never mind. She's been pumping on dead haggis, bagpipes, I think. Have you ever tried to catch one of them haggis up in Scotland? I tell you what, they can run. They can bloody run. I wonder if we've got any bagpipes left. They're fast, them haggis. Rosalind Treen. So benevolent Sean, as he is known by his flock. Sean the Benevolent. Yeah, thanks for you. Where are we? Knights Templar. I'm right at the heart of it. Serena Rothschild, I did. Well, I've been up to a few conferences. What's that just below Edinburgh? Oh, shit. Dalkeith. I've been there a few times. In fact, I fell in love with the castle kind of place. I just thought to myself, this is mine. I should be living here. What a beautiful place. Hawking with cockroaches. Place is hoarding with Scottish right in this area. Oh yeah, of course it is. It's no good, I can coordinate both teams of them all well. Fuck's sake, I'll have to watch it and catch up later. Well, we're nearly done there, Chuck, so it don't matter. Sharon Lass goes into the decos of language. Right, well, yeah, he's a good one, this guy, whoever he is. He is. And somebody sent me a video, so I've put it on underneath to the... I didn't put it on that because we're doing a second part, so if you spoiled it for yourself, that's your own fault. How is anyone who receives mail and opens it supposed to know what the words really mean? There's no dictionary supplied. Well, you have to educate yourself. That's the game, isn't it? You're not here to fanny around watching telly and listen to your ma and pa. Because your ma and pa are thick. You know, they were thick. Unless they were smart cookies, then listen away. But I pretty much realised that my mum and dad were thick as pig shit. Probably when I could breathe, you know. Anyway. No offence to my parents, of course, because they're just like everybody else. They didn't know, but they didn't make any effort to know. So, that's on them. Who needs tickets? Right. Animal husbandry. Yeah, the penny's mightier than the sword, eh? And the gob can do a good job and all. The penny's mightier than the sword. Husband is for animals, partner is wife. Oh, that's another wife! So, wife... man translates as woman, so midwife is a midwoman. So that just took that a little bit further. I have to investigate it again. So midwoman is what midwife is denoting. So if anybody wants to investigate that, we're in biz. Anyway, so sit-ups. I am strict, very strict. Cane comes there. I got cane so many times at school. You won't believe it. In fact, I enjoyed it. In fact, I went to war with a guy called Marsden, who took great delight in giving me the cane, the strap, the slipper. I didn't mind the cane and the slipper, but the strap wrapped round your leg. And if it catches your little nuts, oh, that weren't good. And then you were left with a perfectly white belt mark with black and blue everywhere. And I went to war with that man because, in my opinion, he enjoyed it too much. And my mum kept sending me back for it because every time they were going to whack me, they'd ring her up first. And she, yeah, go on. Honestly. You'd have thought I were horrible as a kid and I was so lovely. Well, I weren't really. I were a bugger. But... And I don't regret anything. I don't regret a thing, mate. Nothing. Because it's brought me to here and taught me everything I know. I've had a few Zooms with Ivan Talbot. He's a decent guy. He is a decent guy, and I have seen some of his stuff. He's very lacking in what he would need to know to take on that mantle. But if he's open to learning, because the king, whoever's been brought to as the king, is taught from the get-go how to control the court, and he certainly doesn't understand any of that stuff. I've seen that in his stuff. But I am gonna. It is right. It's time for me to move with that guy. I think and just see anyway, because we need to get rid of this shower of shit before they destroy our constitutional monarchy. You know. So forget all these sideline garbage, Birmingham, Leicester, Ukraine garbage. It's just eye candy to get you off what they're going to do between Charlie Boy and his ascension and this Truss fleabag, who is an absolute joke. Basically, what she's just done, I've told you that they sanction fracking. They've expanded the seismic limits of it, and they've also, what else have they done? I forgot. I've written it there. What else have they done? Oh, look, the shag bags. I can't remember. Anyway, with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining. I hope it made sense to you, and I hope you gained something from it. And with that, I will say, till the next time.
Okay.